We talk a lot about working with your guides, guardians, and gods on this podcast, but we don't often use the word angels, which is weird because I work with angels probably more than I work with anything else. Every night before we go off to bed, I say an invocation to the 4 archangels. I also invoke the spirits of earth, sea, and sky, and I see them as slightly different but similar things. I hear a lot of people talking about angels in ways that I don't feel fit the metaphysics of angels, at least as they are presented in the various traditions that have given them to us. And I thought it might be interesting to take a little bit of time, especially since in September we're going to be celebrating Michaelmas again, the Feast of the Holy Archangels, to have a conversation about what it really means to work with angels, what angels are, and why you might want to incorporate more angelic practice into your practice. Let's talk about angels today as we walk together down Creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan druid and a mischief maker.
Today, we're going to be talking about angels, what angels are, why you might want to work with angels, how to work with angels, and just giving a brief overview. We're going to be pulling a lot from the Jewish and Christian tradition on this. In fact, most of my angel working is born out of both the occult and Jewish Kabbalah. We're going to be treating that with the same care that we normally do. As somebody who is a practitioner of the Hermetic Kabbalah, I will be talking more from that perspective, but I do think there are some places to get a deeper dive into the Jewish Kabbalah as well. Though we are going to be starting from the Jewish perspective, because I think Rabbi David Cooper gives us one of the best ways to understand angels and demons. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on the particular platform you're listening to us on. We do 5 original Christopagan and Druid episodes Monday through Friday, and you don't want to miss a thing because we've got a lot of fun stuff planned. All right, let's just get into it now, shall we? So what is an angel? Angels are not what most people think they are. In fact, they're probably closest to what a practitioner of chaos magic would call an archetype. Angels are more than anything else crystallizations of energy. They're strands of energy that are all focused on a similar thing. Raphael is the easiest one to understand in this context. Raphael is the archangel of healing. In fact, it's in his name. Rapha means healing. He is the healing of God, or the healer of God. So when we are invoking Raphael, we are calling on him for health and safety. Raphael is the angel that is called on when somebody is sick, when somebody is traveling. That is Raphael. As far as whether there is a distinct spirit, we could do a whole metaphysics of spirits episode on this. And I might even, if we do decide to do that, let us know in the comments if that's something you want us to do. I might try to bring in a friend of mine who is a chaos magician to talk from that point of view. They have a lot of interesting ideas when it comes to archetypes. But I would say no, there is not a singular archangel Raphael. There is this energy of healing and safety that we have named Raphael, that has a certain personality that goes along with healing and energy that can be drawn upon and interacted with. I want to state it that way because I hear some practitioners, especially some of those who are on YouTube and TikTok, start trying to talk above their station when they're like, I've been meeting with this archangel and they took time out of their busy schedule to meet with me. No, they didn't. That is working off the idea that any of these non-human intelligences are contained in time and space, which is a whole metaphysical question we can get into. Once you are entering the realm of pure energy, these limitations that we experience as embodied physical forms are not necessarily there, right?
That's where I sit back and I go, this part of the debate could be simply, it's like picking up a quarter and somebody describing the head side of the quarter, somebody else describing the tail side of the quarter, and then having an argument over what the quarter is, even though they're both right because they're both talking about a quarter. If it is an entity that exists outside of time and space, manifesting in time and space, then those rules don't exist. So therefore it could be multiple places at the same time. It's not like one of us stopping and having to pause our busy schedule to take time to be somewhere. It's not the same at all. And so to try to think in those terms is not correct.
And I think one of the most accessible books on this topic, if you really want to get into it, is Rabbi David Cooper's God is a Verb. It's a very good book. I highly recommend it. And it really does get into the metaphysics here that we're talking about, especially when I have arguments with people about the existence of God, because they're arguing about God as a noun. I would agree with you. God as a noun does not exist. God is not a noun. God is a verb, a very specialized kind of verb. Even in the Hebrew language, the two primary names of God are actually verbs. They're versions of the verb to be. So yeah, we argue past each other quite a lot when it comes to these things because we are putting them in the wrong category. And angels also are not nouns. And when you start treating an angel like a noun, I think you're having a problem. Now, I'm not saying that's true for all spirits. I do think that there is a proper noun Bridget. I think that there is a proper noun for a lot of spirits that are out there, but they are also nouns that are associated with verbs, right? There is Bridget and there is Brigidine, but I do believe that there is an actual spirit entity there. Getting really deeply into the metaphysics of all this. Like I said, we can go into this a lot if you want to on a future episode. Let us know in the comments. But angels and archangels and demons even are not separate entities in that way. They are these kind of energies that are given names. They are verbs. So one of the things that Rabbi Cooper brings up in this book is you go to get into the car and you bump your head on the top of the car. Did a demon make you do that? Rabbi Cooper's answer is yes, because all of the situations that led up to your foot and your body being in the wrong place, when you stepped into the car to cause harm to yourself, those situations collectively are the verb demon. There's not a little demon there attacking you. It's that situation. All the things that are part of that action that led to that cause of harm are the demon. And that demon coalesced, you banged your head, and then dissipate. The same is true with angels. Angels are energies that manifest and then dissolve. They can manifest for an extended period of time. There's a good chance that our angelic guardian manifested with us at our birth and dissipate and remanifest at various points in our lives, but typically are probably with us throughout our entire life. That they say that protective energy is just there throughout our lives, but will dissipate at the moment of our death. And that's where I see a difference between our angelic guardian and our fetch. I don't think that they're the same thing. They're different things with different purposes. And a fetch is a actual spirit. But again, if you want us to do an episode on or more episodes on any of this, let us know in the comments. But angels are these kind of momentary manifestations of positive energy. Demons are these momentary manifestations of negative energy, and they come into being and they just, the most dangerous demons, like Mammon, the demon of greed, are the demonic equivalent of an archangel. Greed is such a strong and constant emotional state that this energy is able to maintain a form in existence beyond just its momentary being. And so we can talk about some of these named demons. They're not entities in their own right. They are, for the most part, archetypes that embody a particular kind of energy.
Oh, no. And also they get continuously fueled and brought back up over and over again. In the case of greed, Hammond to go away, gotta get rid of greed. You just have to stop being greedy. And that's also why on some levels it's that easy, but practically looking at the actual execution of it, it is ridiculously hard.
And you can see echoes of this in the episode we did on Wednesday about unclean spirits. That is actually our spirit has an unclean spirit when a trauma basically takes a portion of our energy and turns it into something negative within us. Exercising that either through working through and processing that trauma or through other safely and carefully administrated moves that we would call an exorcism can be helpful. Again, I put all the caveats in that episode. Go check out that episode. When we're talking about working with angels, we are really talking about tuning into these energies. They could be angels that are manifest for a specific purpose, or they could be these greater energies that we have named. Your Raphael, your Uriel, your Shiatziel, your Michaels.
Ratziel.
Yeah, Ratziel.
my favorite.
I am very much of the opinion
Yeah.
that Ratziel and Michael are the same entity,
Yeah.
that they're the same. They're different names for the same energy, just different kind of polarities of the same energy. But that's a whole other discussion we can get into. When you're working with angels, I think people have misconceptions because this kind of feudal dynamic was put into the stories where you have God on a throne, and then you have the archangels, which are the royal court around God, and then you have the angels, which are, I guess, the knights and sheriffs and other feudal lords underneath God. There is this sense of then in this pecking order where people will quote lines like, "What is man that you are mindful of him, for you have made him a little lower than the angels." The actual word there is Elohim, and it's you made him a little bit lower than the gods. And that's not what that verse is even saying. We're trying to apply this very medieval concept to things that did not originally happen. When we're talking about working with angels, every time you wish somebody well, like we say, have a good trip, that is in the lightest form a magical spell that is creating a little angel that is going from you to that person. The more intent and energy you put into it, the stronger that angel is that gets birthed in that moment. You are working with angels in something that simple. Get well soon, that's invoking a little angel. Most of our magic, when we really start thinking about it and understanding what angels are and how angels work, is the invocation of these little spirits, these little things that we call angels, to emerge from this energetic foam of the universe to perform a specific task. While I feel like to some people that overly mystifies the idea, I think to a lot of people it helps to demystify the idea, because we're not invoking somebody to leave a grand castle in the sky to go and do a thing. One way to think about an angel is like when you plug an appliance in. You've now connected the circuit, and while that circuit is active, that is the angel. Once that circuit is no longer active, that energy goes back into the flow and is not that angel anymore.
I think there's something else that helps to both demystify, but also to help put some context for the individual who's experiencing these things. You can also think of it in terms of the archangels and stuff, because their focus is tied around energies that are more ubiquitous amongst humanity. That is why their presence tends to be a stronger, more intense presence for most to experience. When you're talking about the healing of the world manifesting as a presence before you, this is why an experience of Raphael can be much more dynamic of an experience versus, I guess you could say, a smaller healing angel that is representing more of a smaller presence. And same thing on the demonic side. I think the experience of the presence and the moment makes somebody want to ascribe pecking order as well. It is a natural inclination to be like, this presence was so awe-inspiring, it shook me to my knees. Therefore, it is way more powerful than this other presence that just gave me prickles on the back of my neck. But that isn't necessarily, that is an interpretation that isn't necessarily a correct.
It's an experience. And when you're thinking about experience is always relative. When you're thinking about archangels and angels, these are the two lowest of the celestial hierarchies, according to Pseudo Dionysus, which in the Christian West is usually the accepted order of angels. Of the 9 choirs of angels that Pseudo Dionysus names, they're the two on the bottom. Your seraphim and your cherubim and everything else, your powers and dominions and whatnot, they're all above angels and archangels. A spirit is, according to Pseudo Dionysus. The way you'll usually see these brought up, even in a more Judaic and Kabbalistic way of thinking of things, the Malachim, which are the angels, are on the bottom, and the archangels are right there. They're associated with the Sphirot of Yesod. They're right at the bottom. But in Malkuth, they're the two lowest of the Sephirot, of the or spheres of manifestation of divine energy. And on these last two, we have the archangels and the angels. In fact, of the 4 worlds, the angelic world is the one associated with our world of form, and the archangels are in the next world up. So we're talking about the lowest forms of these energies that we can associate with. And I think that's important to demystify them for ourselves, so that when we say that you, your children, anybody else could invoke the archangels, this is an old practice, right? May the Archangel Michael stand to my right. May the Archangel Gabriel stand to my left. May the Archangel Uriel stand before me. and the Archangel Raphael stand behind me, and may the Shekinah be above us. Now, prayer I say is a little bit more elaborate than that, but that's the root prayer for going to bed that has been practiced for centuries. And those archangels can be there for each individual person because you're tapping into this larger stream, this larger flow of energy. You're not asking somebody to come protect you and not protect others. Once we start understanding that, our working with angels is a lot better. A lot of people think it cheapens it to say something like, when you stub your toe, that was a demon. One, they either think that's offshoring any responsibility for you because demons do everything, or it cheapens what a demon is. Demons are the cluster of circumstances that came together to cause a bad, unfortunate, or destructive thing to come into being. Every time you stub your toe, that is a demon. It came into being, you stubbed your toe, and it dissipated again. Every time. Got a vapor cut? That was a demon.
And for those that are concerned about the abdication, it's no, you take ownership of that. As taking ownership, you have to go, what have I been doing in my life that has been creating all this negative energy to feed and manifest this demon in my life? You don't just go, I stubbed my toe, the demon did it, and then you go on about your life.
Somehow you summoned a demon.
No, if you got up all angry that morning and you stomped around the house angry and just was fueling and building up anger and got in your car and hit your head.
If you're not being mindful of the motions that you take,
or if you're being too oblivious of your environment.
These are ways that we can help ourselves see our own complicit in the manifestations of these things, because we're seeing them now as a contained system. We can look into that and say, what part of the system did I participate in to bring about this situation? It's very helpful and very instructive when we start doing it to these smaller things, because there are fewer elements in there. The more complex, the bigger the thing we're talking about, like, why did this horrible person win this election? That's a very complex, complicated question and answer. And it's going to have a lot of moving parts and a lot of different things. We're going to argue and disagree on what those parts are, and it's going to be a whole discussion. But with something as simple as, I stubbed my toe, was I not paying attention to where I was going? Was I running around angry? What were the situations that led to this? It helps you figure out how to better the tasks that you are participating in so that you are summoning more angels and less demons. It is not an abdication of responsibility. It is taking ownership of what happened so that you can see, oops, I summoned a demon. Oops, I have a paper cut. I stubbed my toe, fill in the blank. But sometimes that gets carried too far, right? I see a lot of people comparing Parkinson's disease or cancer, these diseases, to demons. And while I would say that analogy is apt, I think you could easily see all of those things. Alzheimer's is a demon. It is a demon that is robbing someone of their memory and identity. But again, not everything is in your personal control. And this is what you start learning when you start with something small. Why did you stub your toe? Maybe the cats put a ball in one of their toys, or one of your kids put one of their toys in a place, and while you were stepping around it, you stubbed your toe. So the thing was inside your control and outside your control because there was a toy with it, right? You're not always in control of the elements that cause these things, right? Just because you slip and fall, okay, you slipped and fell, that was a demon. Were you not paying attention to where you're going? That could be a big part of it. Was it raining and the ground was really muddy and the ground gave way under your foot? You didn't have control over whether or not the ground slipped and took you down with it, right? Sometimes you are learning that various aspects are outside of your control. And this is something that is vitally important to anybody who is practicing magic, because yes, magic is the expression of will, right? It is the choosing of the potentialities that you want to have and weighting the system to get to the potential that you want. But sometimes the odds are stacked outside of your control, and learning how to see what those things are. You didn't choose your genetics. So if you have a genetic predisposition, which a lot of the illnesses we just mentioned do have, it is not your fault that you got those diseases. You see what I'm saying? This isn't about saying everything is your fault, because I think that's the other place where people go wrong in this way of thinking. And again, why working with the small things helps us to learn that. Maybe you tripped on the stairs because whoever built those stairs, they were an inch too tall or an inch too short, or that one particular step was just a couple millimeters off from the other steps. That little bit of fudge factor can cause you to trip and fall every time.
Every time.
Unless you built those steps or have the ability to rebuild those steps. So you're learning through this process what is in your control and what is outside of your control, and not just saying, oh, the devil made me do it, or, oh, a spirit did that. By naming the system that you're interacting with, you can see what elements in that system you did have control over and what elements were outside of your control. As a proper magic practitioner, you then work better on tweaking the knobs on the things that you have control over. And that's really what it means to work with angels. I hope this didn't overly demystify it for people. I think too many people who are not like down in the weeds of the work.
Yeah, it can seem so out there. And also, once again, when somebody does start really working with it and they have experiences, it's easy to get carried away with those experiences because sometimes they can be quite intense and profound. And a lot of it is about, back to that humility.
Everything in its proper place.
Everything in its...
So hopefully this has helped you understand how to work with angels. Because yeah, a lot of it is intentionality. Every one of your intentions births a tiny little angel or demon. You get angry at somebody, that's a little demon. You wish somebody well, it's a tiny little angel. And well, there's so many of those tiny little angels and demons floating around that they are negligible in the grander scheme of things. That's why just saying get well soon, it doesn't miraculously heal people. But in learning in the small things, we start seeing in the bigger things. And we start understanding exactly what this work is and what it pertains to. And we can have deeper conversations, because the most interesting part of this, if you want us to do an episode on the Prince of Persia at some point, because this is one of the most interesting interactions with an angel, I think, found in scripture. It took forever for Michael to arrive because he had to contend with the Prince of Persia first. The archangel had to find a way through a principality before he could manifest. There's a lot of juice in there, and maybe we'll do an episode on that in the future. Let us know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in. So yeah, what are your thoughts? Have you ever thought about angels like this before? Have you read God is a Verb? If so, let me know what you think in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube, Spotify, or CreationsPaths.com, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say you can leave a comment, they don't notify us, so we won't know. But you can leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to CreationsPaths.com, click on chat, and you can leave a message there, and we will see it, and we will be able to get back to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars, you can pass our way. We offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both, and you can support us using the Cash App hashtag CreationsPaths. Thank you to everybody who does that. We are ever so grateful. Thank you so much. You all really do help us keep the lights on, keep a roof over our head, and food on our table. If we've ever said anything that's helped you out, please share it with others. That helps us out more than you know. And as we're heading out today, I want to say a very generic prayer. I thought about going in specific on one of the archangels, but since we're talking about the little things. Oh, blessed angelic guardian, it's been with me since my birth. Guide me and keep me, and help me to ever see the path that I should walk upon. Help me to grow in wisdom and in grace, and to ever be mindful of your presence. Amen.
Amen.